Call this meeting to order. Kelly, would you establish a quorum?
Yes, Trustee Householder. Trustee Lewis.
Present.
Trustee Rocha.
Here.
Vice President Hernandez, he did state he would be late. And President Hack.
I'm here.
We have a quorum.
So we have a quorum. So, Jessica.
Good evening, everyone. This evening, where are you on?
Are we doing the flag? No?
Good evening. This evening, I want to do a little bit of a budget workshop so that the board in preparation for the next June board meetings when we bring the budget forward, you have some information going in. So if we can move to the first slide. So our purpose today is to help the board understand the current finances and how we exercise management oversight in the area of finance. Our goal is to not only familiarize the board with the processes, procedures of establishing the budget, but also for you to help set priorities, the what's of what you would like to see as we're developing the budget. And I'll show you some areas that we may have some flexibility. So the budget's an annual process, and it is ongoing. A budget is a living document that continues to grow. What you're going to see tonight is what we know as of today. That is definite, primarily what came out in January. We are anticipating there is the May revise coming out next week. I will tell you where I've heard that there are some changes that we can anticipate, but those are not included until they're done. I just think that's the better approach. You don't spend money before you know you're going to get it. So the budget is intended to allocate resources to the prioritized needs of the district. It has to be balanced. Your current revenues have to be sufficient to pay your current services. And then we must prepare it in compliance with all of the federal, state, local guidelines. We use a zero balance budgeting here in Antioch. We do not roll over our budget. We start with our system telling us the employees we have and where they will be so that we can encumber salary, benefits, all of the things that we know about. And then each of the departments, we have them build their budget as to what their needs are, and then we try to fit that within our budget. And obviously, if there's big sways, we have to look at what's new this year that then was here at the year before. The sites are also provided their funding allocations based on criteria such as enrollment, free and reduced meal counts, or site-specific grants or entitlements, and we have quite a few of those. Human resources and fiscal, right now, I oversee both, so I talk with Mia, and we collaborate on the enrollment, the staffing, and the funding projections. The superintendent initiates the budget process each year, and we do that. We must adopt a budget by July 1st. The public gets notice at least 10 days in a public newspaper, and we also publish a variety of places. There's a specific format that we must use, which is called the SACS format, which puts everything in a funding source series of numbers so that the state can track it. It must be reviewed and certified by our County Office of Education, and we have to show a 3-year, multi-year that shows that we can afford what our budget says, not only this year, but for the following 2 years. Next slide, please. This is just a cycle, and I'm not going to read through it, but it tells you what happens every year, and pretty much the business department has some report, some auditing that goes on each month, and we complete those every year. So when we look at our general fund, the budget revenue projections are our LCFF, our local control funding formula. We get revenue on both state aid, and we also, that's your base, we also get some revenue through supplemental and concentration, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. We receive federal dollars, both grants and entitlements. We receive some state grants and entitlements, and we have the lottery money that comes in. And then finally, we have some local. Those are grants that we've gone after or donations and so forth here to the district. So where does the money come from to operate our schools? 71% of the money comes from our LCFF sources. So I can't talk too fast. 17% is from federal. Other state resources is about 12%, and local is much smaller, about 3% of our revenue. I want to talk a little bit about our one-time funding, and that's going to be a large portion of this presentation this evening because we have a lot of one-time funding. If you look at the chart, those in red have been fully expended over the last few years. And those are monies that came in that did have some timelines to them. So we have the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant, we have the Educator Effectiveness Grant, we have the Learning Loss Mitigation, which has been fully expended. We have the In-Person Instruction Grant, we have the Expanded Learning Opportunity Program, not to be confused with the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant. So we have ELOG and ELOP. We have ESSER 1 that has been fully expended. We have ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. The extended learning was separated into two pots. One is specifically for paraprofessionals. So I'm going to show you that a little bit set aside so that you can see how we've expended that and what we have left. So how are our dollars spent here in Antioch? About 78% of our budget is salary and benefits, and that is a good number for us to look at, especially in a district of our size. And there's a variety of other sources that make up that 100% of our budget, and I won't go through each of them individually. So for 22-23, the LCFF, we receive a base grant for every student. We receive supplemental grant for those students that are in our unduplicated count. And we have a 72.10% unduplicated count. We receive 20% in excess of the base grant. And then for those districts that are over 55%, which Antioch is in, we also receive a concentration grant. So all of those make up the LCFF, as most people refer to it. So our revenue in the base is $131,653 for next year. Our supplemental and concentration is roughly $33.9 million, and for a total of $165 million plus some. So what are some of the assumptions that we're looking at as we build our budget? And here's where I'm going to tell you some differences that I see coming potentially in March. So when we built this, we are assuming that the ADA calculation is going to stay the same. Right now, the way we receive our revenue is the greater of your average daily attendance of this year or the prior year. And we have been declining, as have almost every district in the state of California, even before the pandemic, but it's been exacerbated. So we are anticipating a decline of for next year. There is talk in Sacramento of one of two things. One, basing our pay on enrollment and not ADA. I don't anticipate that going through. The other one is to do a 3-year trend, and that I do see as a possibility. So that would increase the dollars to Antioch if that is to go through. The other big change, so we have our entitlement for our target funding factors. Sorry, I have to, my glasses, this is a little bit small to read. Our statutory COLA is the other one that I anticipate a big difference. We have based this on 5.33, which is the last we heard in January. Earlier this week, there was a release that went out anticipating that COLA is going to be 6.56. And that is based on the formula itself. So I do anticipate that change being made. There was a release today that some in Sacramento would like to see a deemed COLA, and that would be, they're just going to decide that's what it is. So we may end up with what we did a couple years ago called a mega COLA, where they add something to the actual COLA on an ongoing basis. So I do anticipate potentially seeing something there, but we will not know that until the budget is finalized. Our California lottery is going down slightly based on, sorry, that one's 0. Our learning loss mitigation, as I mentioned earlier, has been fully expended, so that is going down along with some of our other one-time monies. We have had a slight decrease in our unduplicated count. We do take a trend when we build the budget, but as COVID's been there, we have seen a reduction, as have most districts, because not as many people fill out the paperwork. It's no longer required, and they're looking at doing something in Sacramento about that as well. Okay. Our workers' compensation factor has actually gone down by about 0.35, and I have to thank our staff for that. They are working really hard to help our employees get back to work early, and that has brought that down. When you look at our medical, this does factor in what we know today as to our increases, but we do anticipate them going up as well in January. And then finally, the property liability insurance. We've actually, if things weren't what they are in California right now, we would be going down because our percentages went down in both property and liability. I'm not exactly sure why, but when they're taking the business back out due to all of the fires in California across the board, liability and property have gone up. So this is estimated. We haven't got our final numbers, but we are being told it's going to be in excess of 10 to 12%. So I want to spend some time on some of the one-time money because that is right now until we know what happens in Sacramento where we have some flexibility. So the ELO Opportunity Grant, we were originally received revenue or a grant of a little over $10 million. That money must be spent between July of 2020 to September 30th of 2024. The board will recall we brought a plan forward to the board and we've been implementing that plan. We have, about 1.458 million remaining. That's primarily going to be around after-school tutoring. We have lots of other pots that were used this year, so some of that money did carry over. In the paraprofessional, there was 1.1 million, and that's what I mentioned earlier. Those are separated out. We have about 717,000 that will cover our paraprofessionals that are in that funding source for the next 2 years. So we have scheduled that. Again, the plan's a 3-year plan, so we're able to do that. Next page, please. The Educator Effectiveness Grant to the board back in December approved the plan for that. The timeline is actually from December 30th of 2021 through June 30th of 2026, and the board did adopt a plan around things of professional development. This money is for teacher professional development, and that was in the areas of standard-based instruction, professional learning networks, California reading and literature, etc. There was some paraprofessional training included in that as well. But that plan is adopted, and we are on track to expend the monies exactly how the board presented it. The Expanded Learning Opportunity Program is a new program, and we've really been waiting for some guidance as to how it's going to run. We have revenue of about $3.8 million this year. It is ongoing revenue at this point. It has some requirements around it, however, and that is that there be a minimum of 9 hours available for students in TK through 6. There has to be some summer intercession available, and it can be combined with our ACES funding, which is how we're looking at potentially doing that. And there will be a plan coming to the board later in May, probably May 25th for the first reading. So adoption has to be by June 15th. And what we're looking is to expand our after-school program at our elementaries that do not have it, so that it would be available to 6 o'clock for all of our elementary schools and some of the 6th grades at a couple of our middle schools. To run that, though, we're going to need even though it's going through BACR, I do believe we need an administrator on site. And this would be a way to combine it with our vice principals at the elementary schools now, maybe have a late start for those vice principals. They would be full-time at one site and then be able to stay till 6 o'clock. And they're part for the after-school program, along with available to help after school, during lunch, all of those things where we need some administrative support. That plan will come up to about the 3.7, 3.8. There will be some costs that go in there as well. We do have 1 year of carryover to help with that, but we have to have an ongoing plan that fits within our year's budget, so that whatever carryover we have from this year may be able to do some special things over a couple of years, but the ongoing plan would be within the ongoing money. Okay. Our next pot of money is our in-person instruction, and this was, again, one-time money that the state put in place when we returned to in-person learning. We had about $5 million. Some of this, if you recall, we used for our learning centers. When we open those up, there is about $3.5 million remaining. That is available to support our summer programs this year, but there would be some available for the goals or priorities that we're going to look at later for 2 years only, because this does expire on September 24th, 2024. Okay. I didn't put ESSER 1 in here because that's fully expended, but ESSER 2 is about $13.6 million. The timeline for that is March 13th, 2020 to September 30th, 2023. This had the most flexibility, so that is available. We have not expended any of the money, or very little of it, and so it would be available to fund any goals or priorities that we look at, but for 1 year only. Our ESSER 3 revenue will be about $30.5 million. The timeline is from March 13th to 2020. From March 13, 2020 to September 30th, 2024. The plan was adopted by the board on October 27th. The last board meeting, I brought it back for review, and we will be bringing that for review again after we close our books for the 21-22, and we see on what was encumbered, what was actually spent. So there could be some monies available in ESSER 3 that we could look at, either to extend some of the programs for additional time, because some of them were only 2 years, or to look at other ways to spend that money. So what are some of the challenges that we have? Well, I talked a little bit about student enrollment. Student enrollment is, we are continuing to decline, and I've got to tell you, I don't know many districts in California that are not right now. Our CalSTRS and our CalPERS are expected to go up, and not expected, they are going to go up, and I'm going to show that on another slide. Right now, there is no talk in Sacramento that I'm aware of to give us any relief on the pension obligations at this point. And our special education costs continue to rise.
Correct.
So this is just a chart for you to look at your own leisure, but it really does show you what's happening in K-12 in California as to our enrollment. And as I said, it is going down across the state. We lost more than 6 million students over the last few years in California. There is challenges because of that enrollment unless the state fixes it. And this is the cliff that you guys have seen before. I do believe that the 3-year trend will help soften that for districts, not just this year, but probably ongoing, so that we can make plans around when we have to start reducing, because you can't reduce teachers. The kids don't go in nice little packages. 24 first graders don't go from one school. So you have to be able to plan for that over a period of time. So I think the 3-year trend will help us do that. This does show you, the next page is on our CalSTRS. It is going up from 16.92 to 19.10%. So for every dollar of salary, 19 cents goes towards STIR's pension. It will, at 19.10, it stops, and it will be flat ongoing from then on. But that is a large percentage of, for any of you who remember, it used to be at 8.25, 8.5% that we contributed. So over the last 10 years, it has been growing substantially. And PERS is going from 22.91 to 24.6. It will continue to rise. CalPERS does not cap out next year. And that's for your classified employees. This gives you a little bit of the CalPERS over the next 4 years. Up in 2026, 27, it will go up to 27.6%. And there is no promise that it stops at that point, by the way. That's just as far out as CalPERS has gone. And then this just gives you the history of CalSTRS, where we've been. It was actually 8.25 in July of 2013. And again, we will be at 19.1 this year. So the board has talked, different board members, about some of their priorities and goals. One of the things we heard about is recruiting and retaining staff. And these are in no particular order, and by the way, ones that staff agree with. So, but recruiting and retaining staff, pursuing additional revenue opportunities, increasing student access to libraries, increasing mental health supports, and I'm sure there are some others that I just tried to capture the ones that I've heard most often over the last few years for you board meetings. So with that, that is my budget presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. I definitely want to acknowledge Mia Cancio, who helps me work on this. We're a great team in trying to get you the information so that you guys can make some informed decisions on how we move forward.
And thank you for mentioning Mia, because she's been the anchor in this avenue for a long
Most
time.
definitely. Couldn't do it without her.
Yeah.
Mr. Ganger, would you mind putting that last slide up? Because I think that's not
The one with the priorities.
So Trustee Hernandez. After the presentation, Ms. Romeo, would you explain that last slide where you
Sure.
talked?
I went through all of the funding and what might be available, but one of the things I wanted to list is show the priorities that I've heard most often from the board, to try to get some direction as we see available monies, what the whats are that the board would like to see us move forward with. One is retaining and recruiting and retaining staff, pursuing additional revenue opportunities, increasing student access to libraries, and increasing mental health supports. If those are still the priorities of the board, then as we are able to identify, I work with the superintendent and the associate superintendent, and we help to figure out how to meet those priorities that the board has set out.
Can that be defined? I mean, in other words, if I say recruit and retain staff, am I looking at the possible VP? Am I looking at the possible counselors? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, and let's say that I'm going to take a little bit easier one for a minute. Let's say that it's increasing mental health supports. That's the what that you would like to see the district work towards. Then as staff, we would go through and see how do we best meet that needs with the available funds and
Correct.
move that forward. The same with all of those other recruiting and retaining can be a variety of ways.
Correct.
I've heard about the vice principals. That's why I worked on the ELOP, to try to meet that need for the elementary schools, because that's a funding source that allows that. And if the board adopts that plan on June 15th, then that's part of that want. But it is trying to meet the what, and then we can figure out the hows.
Thank you.
Can you explain the increase in the libraries?
Well, there's a lot of ways. What I've heard is that we want libraries accessible to children. So that's why we put it in that way. There could be a variety of ways that we accomplish that.
But is the district pursuing those ways.
Well, we will if the funding is available and the board sets that as one of their priorities, yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
so if I'm understanding correctly, the idea behind this is these 4 items would be sort of priorities, and then we would have work groups to determine, how we interpret each one of those categories.
No, the board would set the goals, if I'm understanding what you're saying, and then we work it's staff's job to figure out how we accomplish your goals. So we would work on doing that. If there are additional goals, then that is something that the board would bring forward as goals that they'd like us to meet. I tried to pick the ones that I've heard most often. That doesn't mean those are the only ones that have come up, but I tried to pick what was there. If those are not the goals, or let's say there's not enough to do everything, then we would have to make recommendations about what that would look like.
Okay, so the interpretation of each one of those categories will be left to the staff.
How best to accomplish that goal, yes.
And
We
then
would come
group
back.
to us.
I'm sorry. And we would come back to the board with a plan.
That's what I'm saying.
If those are your priorities, we would say, okay, that's what you want to accomplish. Here's how we're recommending we accomplish that.
Just a quick comment. Because these priority areas look great to me. I think it'd be, I guess, more of a comment for President Hack. I think it'd be worth having a discussion as a board to make sure that these are our priority areas and make sure we have those solidly. I mean, it looks like it's a good interpretation of the things we've been saying, but I think it's worth having that discussion to make sure we kind of, dot our I's, cross our T's.
If we're willing to have a special board meeting to discuss that, then we can do that. But if Mia and Jessica have, these are the priorities that people have said and they're feasible, then you can come back to us with the parameters.
Yeah, and we can do both things because there's going to be some monies that we know are available today. Again, one time is all that I know today, so using that money without having a 3-year plan for a particular service that requires hiring people, I would never recommend. You don't want to hire somebody from another job to turn around and have to lay that person off in a year. That's very unfair, and just really bad human resource practices. But so if it's, let's say with the mental health supports, the positions that we fill would meet those needs, I would do a plan that allows them to be funded over a period of years. Because then with attrition and other things, you're probably in pretty safe shape to do that. If it's something that can be done in one time, that's usually not hiring people.
So what you're suggesting is that you would come back to us with some parameters, financial, whatever,
Yeah.
personnel, as opposed to the board.
Well, I think
Having discussion,
one
I don't
is,
know.
one is setting priorities, and that does not have to be done tonight because, like I said, there are some other times that, we may make some recommendations on things that we see right now need to happen. I would always want to do that while hiring season is in. It's hard to start something once the school year starts. But we could have another conversation if that's the board's desire to solidify what your wants are and your priorities are, and then we can make the plan to come forward. But the sooner the better. And the ELOP grant will be coming forward for a first read on the 25th and an adoption by the board on June 15th. That does need to be finalized before June 30th, and I wanted to bring it in 2 parts. One, so you can hear it, get some input before we bring it back for final.
And we can have a work study before the next board meeting also. Give you time to kind of think about these things, write down maybe, yes, these are exactly it, or, I'd like to tweak this and have a conversation about that before the next board meeting, if that works. All right.
Any thoughts? Reactions?
I think that works.
I like it.
Yeah, because I think, we want to make sure that we are all, at least the majority of us are in agreement with these. So, yeah.
And I want to be clear, I want the priorities, but I can't guarantee until I see what they are, how we're going to fund them, or that we can fund them to the full extent of what the board would like to see.
Correct. They're good. They're looking good.
I think there's someone trying to get in.
Oh. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, would you like to adjourn for 10 minutes? Use the bio break?
We're
Some
on
water?
the work study session, and we'll be back at 7 o'clock.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good. That was
Thank
good.
you.
Well done. Easy to understand.
Okay, I'll call this meeting back to order. Closed session is finished. We have nothing to report out. So Kelly, would you reestablish the quorum, please?
Yes, Trustee Householder, Trustee Lewis,
Present.
Trustee Rocha,
Here.
Vice President Hernandez,
Here.
President Hack.
I be here.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum. So Antonio, would you lead the flag salute?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting on April 13th.
Move approval?
Motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Superintendent reports.
Yes, good evening. I want to start off this evening by congratulating all of our Golden State Merit Diploma awardees. We had a total of 198, I'm sorry. And this is recognizes students who have been demonstrated mastery in at least 6 subjects.
Wow.
And Antioch High School had 65, Deer Valley High School 77, Dozier Libby Medical High School 56, again for a total of 198. So congratulations to all of them. A lot of hard work. And then I want to say happy Day of the Teacher today. As you know, this day was established to recognize the immeasurable effect that teachers have on the lives of students. And then next week is Classified Appreciation Week. Our classified employees include bus drivers, maintenance workers, food service workers. I'm going to forget some, but lots of individuals who really are the foundation of public education. So we want to recognize them. So that is my report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we go on to school reports. First one is Antioch Charter Academy and Antioch Charter Academy number 2 annual performance review. Christine, that's yours.
Thank you. I would like to welcome and introduce, we have members from the ACA, both 1 and 2, here to present their annual performance review. And so we have Elisa McCutcheon and Sarah McLean from ACA 2 and Vicki Willard, I believe, from ACA 1. And they come with a big team of supporters.
All right.
Okay. Good evening, board members, Superintendent Anello. We're very thankful that you've given us this opportunity to present our annual update to you. Tonight, you're going to hear from members of our co-administrative team. They're all here in the audience. And we'd like to begin by painting you a picture of our programs and what makes us unique. The original name of our charter was the Learner-Centered Schools. And although the name has changed, the research-based philosophies, which are the foundation of our programs, have not. And one of the key philosophies embedded in both schools is Montessori. So tonight we'd like to take a little deeper dive and look at how Montessori impacts the things we do at our school sites.
So we're going to be looking at the Montessori core principles. So we have respect for the child, sensitive periods for learning, and a prepared environment, and independence and discovery. So respect for the child. According to the Montessori philosophy, children are naturally inclined to show politeness, compassion, empathy when provided appropriate role models and guidance. The staff at both Antioch Charter Academy and Antioch Charter Academy 2 work every day to create these environments that are peaceful and safe for all students. All students, including teachers, support staff, and volunteers, are there as role models for the students. Montessori classrooms are designed to be places where students feel respected and trusted. One way the Antioch Charter Academies show respect for our students is to offer the students long blocks of work time and allow them to not be interrupted when they are concentrating, or at least interrupt them only when truly necessary. We also allow the students to discover their own mistakes rather than pointing them out. The teachers observe without judgment. Demonstrating respect for a child in their early years helps them to grow to be courteous, kind, thoughtful, and compassionate. At the Antioch Charter Academies, conflict resolution focuses on problem solving through constructive communication. Children feel comforted when their feelings are understood. In the Montessori classrooms, we teach students a rich vocabulary to help them express their feelings. Class meetings give the students a dedicated time and procedure to share their thoughts, feelings, and to work to resolve any conflicts or problems they may be having. Conflict resolution and problem-solving skills are life lessons that will help children interact with other people respectfully throughout their lives. Independence and discovery. The teachers at the Antioch Charter Academies try to meet each student where they are at. The teachers are like guides and facilitators, creating time and places for students to engage in hands-on learning, collaborative learning, and independent learning. The students learn to have confidence in themselves when the adults in the space move out of the way and let students learn by doing. Students feel confident and happy when they finish tasks on their own. The more they find they can do by themselves, the more it benefits them in the long run. The teacher in a Montessori classroom will give students the opportunities to figure out who he or she is and what they are capable of doing. The teachers encourage the students to think for themselves. The teachers trust that the students will be successful. When a student does make a mistake or error, we give them time to recognize and correct that mistake or error. In the Montessori classroom, when we meet a child where they are at, we are also following that child to see where they want to go next with their learning. As teachers, we guide our students by offering many choices and various types of support.
Sensitive periods. Have you ever tried to teach someone something and they just were not getting it? It didn't matter what tool you picked out of your multiple intelligence toolbox, whether it is manipulative based or utilized music or body movement to instruct, nothing worked. Possibly one of the reasons it did not is because the child was not within the sensitive period for learning the task. Maria Montessori believed that children have sensitive periods that are basically spans of time during which a child is intrigued with a particular activity and they are able to learn various skills connected to it. For instance, the sensitive period for a student's interest in reading is between the ages of 3 and 5. And within that 2-year span, the window varies from child to child. Some will not fall within the prescribed time frame and will not have an interest in reading until they are developmentally ready, perhaps at 6 or 7, and that's okay. When students are within a sensitive period, an excitement and energy to achieve occurs as well. In our primary level, students are between the ages of 4 and 6. When you introduce a new job to them, they are literally sponges and want to soak it all in. The sensitive period for math concept is at their age level, and whatever material you're using, whether they are sandpaper numerals, counters, spindles, or golden bead materials, they are intrigued and full of wonder and find everything fascinating, which ignites an inner drive to learn. Montessori classrooms are designed to be multi-age with 3-year spans. They are typically from the ages of 3 to 6, 6 to 9, 9 to 12, and 12 to 15. Our elementary classroom has students that range from 1st grade to 3rd grade. The materials within the classroom fit the sensitive period of their students as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. Prepared environment. The shelves in a Montessori classroom are organized developmentally from left to right, top to bottom, from the easiest jobs to the most difficult within each content area. The main content areas are language arts, math, cultural, and science. The materials in each area are both engaging and appealing to the students, which promotes interest. The students are taught where each material is placed within the classroom, and they are responsible for returning it to its original place in the correct order. The first 6 weeks of school are focused on routines and procedures such as rolling job carpets, carrying trays, placing items on carpets in a left to right direction to mimic the way that we read, and how to sit for a lesson with your teacher. The procedures established in the classroom allow 20+ students the ability to work independently on different jobs. Some children in a Montessori classroom will not be introduced to each job, and some will use materials from the next level. It all depends on the child. The goal of a Montessori teacher is to find a student's zone of proximal development, which is the theory of Vygotsky. You may want to picture the zone like Goldilocks trying to find something just right in the Three Bears house. A teacher needs to match jobs to the student's developmental needs, picking materials that are not too easy are not too hard, but challenging enough to foster interest and independence. Now let's take a look at some of those materials. So you have a little goodie bag in front of you. So these, mine's a little bit bigger than yours. These are called the Sandpaper Letters. And the job includes taking just one finger and this is actually sandpaper, and tracing the letter and making the sound that goes with the letter. So it starts with the simple consonants and vowels, which are always red and blue in a Montessori classroom, no matter what materials you find, whether they're these or the movable alphabet, the consonants stay the same color, and so do the vowels. Then it progresses to the blends, and then finally the vowel combinations. So these are sandpaper letters that we use in both levels in primary and elementary. The next material that you have is just basically, it's called a bead stair. And what they do is it's the beads from 1 to 9, and you put them on a carpet and you arrange them from smallest to largest, and the bead stair goes up. And then as time progresses, you introduce what are called the golden beads in groups of 10. So this would be a teen board hanging material. And it progresses until they have many beads and many materials, and they can do all of the 4 operations with the beads and materials. Those are called the golden bead materials.
Next, we'd like to tell you some of the program operation that we've had during this school year. We did return fully to in-person learning, and neither school site offered a fully remote learning option this year. With some of the money that we got from the state for learning loss funds, we provided additional hours and positions for classified classroom aides and RTI aides to support learning recovery. We were able to continue a 21-to-1 student ratio, which has been the ratio we've had since our charter was started. We've worked with the Contra Costa County for COVID tracing and following all those protocols. We've used part of the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant on a 2-day training at the Museum of Tolerance in LA. We were able to send both our classified and certificated staff to participate in that. We've updated our independent study policy to comply with the new state requirements that were rolled out this year. And we've started planning discussions for expanded learning. So next year, having the longer school days and adding 30 additional days to our school calendar for our kindergarten through 6th grade unduplicated pupils. This is our 4th year as our own LEA for special education with the El Dorado Charter. And our current population of students is 13% of students at ACA and 15% at ACA2. And our resource service incorporate Linda Mood Bell, which is a research-based strategy, as well as Montessori strategies, some of which you just heard about tonight. We have students receiving other services as well. And our multi-tiered system of support, which includes our RTI program, helps us fulfill our child find obligations and allows us to provide individual support for at-risk students, again, following the child wherever they might be. Over the past 4 years, we've increased both our special education percentages as well as the students who receive 504 accommodations. So is all this Montessori and the other philosophies that we have effective? And the data shows, yes, our programs are effective. Both schools are accredited by WASC, and that's typically something that only high schools and colleges are required to do. But we choose to go through that process because it validates our success from an outside party, and it gives us goals that we can focus on to continue to improve what we do. The data shows the effectiveness of both programs. And here we have data from last school year. Last year, the state allowed schools to choose whether to administer CASP or to administer a different state-approved assessment. ACA administered the STAR Renaissance, and ACA2 administered the CASP. And as you can see from the scores here, when we compare to the state averages, ACA students scored higher than the state average in both language arts and math. ACA 2 scored higher than the state average in English language arts and just missed matching the state averages in math. More importantly, with Montessori's emphasis on the individual child, what we want to see is each of our individual students making progress over time. And so the data shows that we're effective in doing that. Here you can see data from cohorts of students over time. And so if you follow, for example, the purple line that goes down the center diagonally, those are students who in 2016 took the CASP test in English language arts in 3rd grade, and then follow them down to where they scored when they were in 8th grade. And we see a continued trend. Our students make progress over time. What we see is different from the statewide trend. Statewide, the student scores remain consistently from 3rd grade to 8th grade about the same. So the fact that our students improve as they go through our program shows us the effectiveness of it. This trend holds true as well in math, or the results for ACA 2. We did have some cohorts which slipped and during the pandemic lost some progress, but we're hoping that now that we're back in person, our scores for this year will continue to show that growth. At ACA 2, or at ACA, the trend is the same. As our students go through our program, they continue to make progress. And just note that this most recent test year does reflect the Star Renaissance growth data rather than the CASP data. ACA continues to make progress in math as well. We did take a look at some of our disaggregated data and shared that with you tonight. We don't have as many subgroups as the district has. In order to have a subgroup, you have to have 10 or more students, and if you have fewer than that, they're not reported for student privacy. So based on the data, what we see is that at ACA 2, the majority of our subgroups outperformed the state average in similar subgroups, including our students with disabilities, our economically disadvantaged students, our English learners, our Hispanic students, and 2 or more races. All of ACA's subgroups outperformed the state average in English language arts. And when we look at math, we see a similar trend. So all the ACA subgroups outperform the state averages in math, and the majority of ACA 2 subgroups outperform the state average, including students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, ever English learners, and 2 or more races.
At ACA and ACA 2, we are comprised of students, parents, and staff. Those 3 components are vital in creating the strong community that we have at our school. You will see in our school logos that we have incorporated the triangle to symbolize the 3 parts of the students, parents, and staff. And while our school has several core philosophies, we chose to focus on the Montessori philosophy for today's presentation. At ACA and ACA 2, we are creating lifelong learners and preparing our students for their time beyond our schools. The Montessori philosophy helps us to do just that. Montessori lays the foundations and plants the seeds for students to grow and develop later on in life. As our students mature, those seeds of respect, independence, problem solving, and much more will be there to support them in helping them find the answers to those big questions of who am I and what am I here for? The Montessori teaching at ACA and ACA 2 helps our students to become multicultural citizens in a global community.
And we'll stop presenting here. You have some extra information that is part of what's in the MOU so that it's there for your reference if you'd like to look at it. All of the co-administrators are listed here, all of our email addresses. And since this was a question that came up, 6 of the co-administrators are teachers and co-administrators, and one of our co-administrators is our chief financial officer. So our school is like a teacher co-op. We don't have a principal. We have teachers who make decisions in conjunction with our staff at our sites. We also included our office managers' email addresses, and if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Any questions?
Very good. Well done.
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment. When I was younger. I taught at Sutter Elementary, and I was in C complex. And in A1 was a lady named Jeannie Dubisky. And I got to know her well. I mean, she's a very lovable person. But she was very much into Montessori. Absolutely. And I spent many a lunch period going from C complex up the hill to A to help Jeannie change her classroom around for the afternoon to do a Montessori program. It was fascinating. And then when she went into ACA, and was a founder there, and I was the president of the union at that time, we would get together and bargain things and talk about things. But ACA is a unique charter school. Montessori is probably the reason. But the people who founded it and still have been there forever, thank you for the report. It's great.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I just had one question. Thank you for the report. This was great. And it was great to see some of the data and share about some of the great accomplishments that you have all had. I'm wondering what are all of you all's goals for this coming year?
Well, I can speak to at AC2, our goal from our WASC visit that we had a few years ago is to continue to focus on our students' social emotional health. And so we're rolling out social emotional supports as part of our multi-tiered system of support. And we want to continue to help our students make growth. So that's always our plan, is to continue that. As I mentioned, for us at ACA2, rolling out, I'm letting ACA answer this as well. ACA2, we're working on rolling out an after-school program, which we've not had before. So that's a piece that our goal is to be able to support students and families who need to stay at school a little bit longer. And those are a few. Anybody else want to
Thanks for the question, though. Yeah, so we also have some pretty big goals. We're focusing on aligning our curriculum, actually. So Montessori schools, we create a lot of our own curriculum, as our brain compatible school does. So we're really trying to make sure we can capture that so everyone can understand what we are doing. And so we're working on a lot of project-based curriculum and experiential learning, and we're trying to create a bridge and really bring that out to the public and then connect the community to those projects. So, like, for instance, right now we have our middle schoolers working in a farm in Pittsburgh that works with adults who are foster youth that have, grown out of the foster program. And so our middle schoolers are going there every week, and they're working on the farm, and then they're bringing what they're learning on the farm and projects that they're doing there to school, and then they're bringing it to the kids at school. That's just one project. So every level has got a project like that we're focusing on. So it's really exciting right now. It's an exciting time. Thanks for asking.
I have a question. Does Montessori go any further than after 8th grade? Is there such a thing?
Yeah, it can.
Yeah, so
I'm wondering.
It is, and you'll find Montessori high schools on the East Coast,
Really?
and they're because it's really big on community and farm and business, and so Maria Montessori had them on a farm. They had working farms, tending to the animals, running the business, doing all the things they would need to do and learn all their curriculum while actually being a community with a thriving business and taking care of living creatures and building that trust and that respect for the earth, for each other. It's a wonderful thing. You don't see it as much out here, but you will find them on the East Coast harvesting honey and selling it and taking care of their bees. It's a beautiful thing to see it in high school.
My second question is, how is the transition going from the 8th to our public schools? Do they stay with us? Do they go on to private school? Have you tracked that?
Yes. In fact, we've actually been working with Andy Cannon and Scott Bergerhouse to help that transition a little bit more over the past couple years. And so we've tracked which students end up at Antioch Unified School District. I would say the majority of our students do end up at AUSD at one of your school sites. But we do have students that go to Clayton. We have students that go to the schools in Brentwood and Oakley. And don't think we have very many that end up at private schools, at least from ACA 2.
Every once in a while, Davis South, or, you know, will be a school that a student will go to.
Yeah.
I can tell you this, being doing this for the 25 years that I've been doing it, that the magnet schools that you've created in the high schools where the kids get to choose, like Dozier Libby, that was huge for the kids at ACA, because that to them felt like a natural next step to be able to sort of like focus in an area and choose that focus. So they choose Dozier a lot at ACA because they like that focus there, but then
Yeah.
the other ones are now really exciting to them as well.
Have you tracked their abilities, you know, at the level that they go in? Do they stay at the 9th or do they go into a higher level?
In math, a lot of times they'll be at higher level, but they start at 9th for everything else.
Okay.
But in math, we sometimes will have like 3 or 4 kids that will go into a higher level math.
We have a class of 20. So we're not talking, 20 at each side, 21, 22 at each side.
know.
We're not talking a lot of kids, right? But we do. And that's another piece we've started working with Scott Burgerhouse and Andy as well, is to let them know what high school math classes our 8th graders who are coming to your district should be enrolled in, so that once they start school, they're getting the correct schedule, and that's hopefully going a little smoother for them. We do have students that come back and report to us, and we do send out surveys to ask students, what were you prepared for? What do you wish? And the thing that's scariest for them is going from a school where there's 20 kids in their grade level to a school that's a lot bigger. But all of them say, like, after a week, we figured it out. It's fine, because they learned all these skills about communicating and problem solving and being advocates for their own learning. And so these are skills that they bring with them to you and at the high school level.
Thank you. Very well. Very good presentation.
So thank you for the presentation. I'm intimately familiar with ACA for a lot of reasons, right? So what are some of the challenges, right? Like, so you have a subset, I mean, because you have smaller classes, you have a subset of sort of the students that we have here at Antioch. What are some of those what are some of the challenges that you face for those students, it's particularly in their first and second year? And then the follow-up will be, how do you address them? Yeah.
So surprisingly, one of the things that we find when students come in, especially to the younger grades, is that choice, that freedom they have to be independent and be responsible. It can be actually very overwhelming. So they find it very confusing. Like, I don't know how to make choices. I don't know how to choose where to work and who to work with and which seat I get to pick. And so that's why as teachers, we do a lot of that guiding. So it's not so much like direct instruction where you're going to sit right here, I'm going to hand you this, and you're going to do this. It's, hey, you can sit here or here, or why don't you pick one of these 3 things? We kind of focus it for them. We give them little pages with actual pictures. So it's very visual of, here's all the different materials that we're going to introduce this week, or that you were introduced to last week, and we're going to help guide your choices. And then as the year progresses, we start to see they're interested in this, they're ready to move on to this next level of a different work, and then we can adjust that. We call it a contract or a work plan, and it can change for each student and individualize. So really one of the biggest things is to acclimate and to make them feel independent and responsible for themselves and manage their time. And the beauty of ACA is that as the students progress in those cohorts of those multi-age grade levels, they get to see older students, how they're handling it. They get to become role models for younger students when they're older. And the levels actually work in tandem together. So our students go from those pages with pictures to help them, and they get to intermediate, and it's not pictures, it's written now. And they have it written on the board, they record it. By the time they get to middle school, they get almost like a syllabus. They have the whole, unit planned out. So it's very progressive, and it works very well together. But that's one of the biggest challenges at the lower levels.
So that choice piece is...
It's the choice.
Yeah.
It really is. And that's a key.
The biggest thing they have to overcome.
Yeah.
We call it normalizing.
Yeah, it's called normalization. Yeah.
To normalize into this space where, because they come in like, used to being told always what to do, or used always being controlled every little minute of the time, and now they have freedom.
Right. Okay.
But they do normalize. Sometimes it
They
takes
do.
longer than, for the older kids. I'm talking older kids. Younger kids do it real fast. I think it takes a little longer for the older students.
You think it's because they've been sort of conditioned to follow and
That,
receive
and I also think
information?
when they realize like they're given all this trust, they choose to do things that are fun for kids. Like, I'm going to plan all the parties. I'm going to plan all the dances, and then the school schoolwork gets set down, but they're still learning these skills. So there's a skill learned there, and they're the one controlling and planning all the events that they've never had a chance to plan before. But then sometimes they set down the academics, so we have to say, well, you got to do it.
Thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts?
Are you going to answer more?
You know you got other things to do.
You know, I am not a great fan of charter schools. I'm not. I am a fan of ACA. Really is, over the years.
We can all agree on that.
All right, let's go forward to the school report from Carmen Dragon. Christine?
All right. So I know that you have heard, I think, in some other previous presentations about the wellness center that they have at Carmen Dragon. But this presentation was put together to really showcase, to give you a taste if you haven't had a chance to be in that space and see and feel what's been going on there. And so that's the focus of the presentation from Carmen Dragon.
Perhaps we should move on while we work on the technical issues.
There's no one here from Carmen Dragon?
No,
Okay,
there's not.
all right.
That's a
so-
lot of words to sit and read. Sorry.
Okay, fair enough. And we'll go on to public comments. And I do not have any speakers cards from the public, nor do I have any speaker cards from district employees. That is the first time it has ever happened, I think, in history. Lord have mercy. Good. So let's go on to district reports. Revisions of term of joint powers authority. Jessica, that's your
Yes,
discussion information.
This evening, we have with us Dave Olson. He is our bond consultant that's going to give some information to the board at this meeting. We would be back at the next meeting with a recommendation. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Olson.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Most of you have seen me before. I'm Dave Olson. I'm the financial advisor to the district's bond program. Work with Baxter McCarley Berry. And usually I'm here to talk about an update on the bond program or the next issuance of district bonds, whether it be new money or refunding bonds or potentially new bond election. But today I'm here to talk about a challenge to the program. And it's a challenge that it's not our fault, but it's one that's going to require that the district board take action, as Jessica indicated at the next meeting. And that'll have some consequences on the district if we don't come to a solution. So I wanted to make a presentation today describing the circumstances that led to this issue, so that when we're looking at the solution, you have the context there. And I'm here today with Bob Campbell, the Auditor Controller of Contra Costa County, and he's closely involved in bond programs that school districts have here, and he doesn't bring a vendor's interest to the solution, but truly the public's interest. So when I say that we're putting in a solution here that's taxpayer friendly and things like that, everybody ought to move their eyes to Bob, and hopefully Bob is nodding his head as we do that to give some credibility. And he's been very, very helpful in working through this problem as we move through. So Stephanie, I would say you complained about the wordiness of some of the presentations. This one also a very wordy presentation, so that's all my doing. If we want to move to the next slide, I'm going to want to start with something that's straightforward. District's been managing a bond program here for about 15 years. First election was in 2008, issued 7 series of bonds in the last 15 years, district taxpayers have been paying off these bonds for the last 13 years. Tax rates last year of the combined bond program was about $68.20 per $100,000 between those two bond authorizations, only within SFID 1. So made $5 million worth of payments. That was about $68.20 per 100,000. Next slide. The particular issue that we're talking about is these bonds issued in 2010, the election of 2008 Series C bonds. The district issued $20.8 million worth of bonds, sold those bonds to an organization known as the California Qualified School Construction Bond Joint Powers Authority. Typically, you're selling bonds to the general public. We'll learn a little bit later why you sold the bonds to a single owner. The main reason is that it was able to generate more funds for the district than the amount of bonds sold. So $24.2 million going to construction for $20.8 million worth of bonds sold. The key reason was that you had a authority to issue bonds that had a federal subsidy. So I don't know if people remember in the wake of the Great Recession, the federal government wanted to encourage school districts that had shovel-ready projects for moving ahead. And so they said, if you apply, we'll pay some of your interest on those bonds. The district had bonds ready to go, projects ready to go, applied, was awarded a $25 million authorization, the authority to sell $25 million worth of these qualified school construction bonds, got the approval from the feds, and moved ahead with that financing. In this particular financing, and this is foreshadowing of one of the problems here, both the district and the JPA hired BNY Mellon Trust Company to be the paying agent on the bonds, or the trustee as appropriate to the firm. So, next slide. Bonds are repaid, as you know, by property taxes. You sell bonds, and we'll see it later. If you sell $20 million worth of bonds, your taxpayers will pay $1.5 million a year for the next 20 years. Every year, the county says how much is due. Divide that by the size of the tax base. That's the tax bill that goes out. Bonds get paid. Every school district in the county has bonds outstanding, bond program outstanding. That's how it works. But earlier this year, we discovered that BNY had misinvoiced the county. So out of that, how many bond issues do we do in the county?
Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 40 right now.
40 bond issues. So get a lot of bills from this. This particular bill said, here's the amount due. We subtract some funds that we have on hand from another source. You don't owe anything. So the invoices went from BNY to the county, suggesting no payment was earned. And what we learned was that they had paid them from other funds that were not the district's, but were the property of the JPA. So we've been working to kind of establish the facts, what payments were missed. We learned that it was not only in 2020, but 2017 as well. So there's 2 years of missed payments where the monies were already refunded to local taxpayers. So there's not a big pool of money sitting around, but we know the monies need to go back to the JPA to some degree. So next slide. Number of challenges, I already mentioned some of them in developing the solutions. These excess collections are not just sitting around. Excess collections, if there's a fund balance at the county, the next year they take into account, they give a little bit lower tax rate to the next year's taxpayers and flush out the money. We also can't come up with the money immediately because there's a process to setting the taxes. We set taxes in the summer, send out bills in the fall. Monies come in December and April. When we found out of this late last year, early this year, couldn't come up with money till next December. Still can't come up with money till next December. General obligations bonds are governed by state law that have some complicated provisions, and the provisions are designed for the standard case, not for something where we're trying to make up past payments. That's a little bit of an issue. The financing plan for the Series C bonds involves these qualified school construction bonds we talked about, these federal subsidies that the BNY has to apply for. It involves a third-party JPA that I already described. There's a lot of moving pieces here. So this is not a simple solution to put together, and I think we've come up with a relatively elegant solution. Next slide. this describes kind of a basic look at how bonds work. Can I walk over? Am I too far away from the mic? If I just walk over quickly, you know, what we see is if you borrow $20 million, pay $1.5 million for the next 20 years, the tax base $7.6 million, but it's going to grow. It's going to cost $20 at first. It's going to go down over time as the tax base grows. Right? That's what Bob does on these 40 bond issues. Next slide. If you get a QSCB, you'll see that the spreadsheets grow here over the next 3 slides. If you get a QSCB, you have that same issue, paying $1.5 million a year, but federal subsidies taking care of 4% of the 4.5% interest. So they're sending you money that lowers your net payment. Go back a slide again. And you see on the right-hand side, the tax rate, instead of being that $19 going down over time, is going to be $9 going down to $8 over time. So it's cheaper to borrow money when you have these federal subsidies, as stands to reason. What the Series C bonds did was involve a third party in order to generate that extra money, the extra $3 million. So next slide. What we have here, and you can't read the numbers really well, but the district bonds, you're paying roughly $29 million in debt service over time. Their JPA also issued bonds, and the JPA paid off those bonds by having 2 streams of revenues, the district bond payments and the federal subsidy. Right? So that's why they were able to sell more bonds, because their income is not only your bond payments to them, but these federal subsidy payments. That's why they're able to give you the additional $3 million. But you can see on this little cash flow, it starts with a beginning balance, their source of revenues, the debt service payment on their bonds, and then the ending balance. Then BNY sees this money over here and tells the county not to levy the tax. But what it does is it takes away from these district bond payments, and instead of working out to 0, it's going to work out to negative $3.5 million over time. Right, so we've got to get the money back. Just stands to reason. Needs to come from the taxpayers. They're the ones who got the benefit of lower rates in the past. Does that make sense?
Question, does that mean that the taxpayer then will go up?
The tax rates in the future would be higher than they would have been under the original
Correct.
financing plan.
Okay,
And they were lower than they would have been under the original financing plan in 2007, or in 2018, the year after the 2017 missed payment, and in 2021, the year after the 2020. But keep in mind, you sold $118 million worth of bonds. This is affecting $20 million of the bonds, and they're the $20 million that are paying relatively low rate because of the.
And wasn't these the
Yes,
bonds
right.
that were this side of town?
Yes, all the bond elections have been in SFID number 1.
Yeah, this side of town. So that means me. I just wanted to know how much it's going to go up.
Right. The payments is $5 million a year is what you're paying. And so the solution that's going to come back to you, you'll see, we try to make that payment up gradually over time. Right. We don't want Bob to levy a double tax next year. So that would solve the problem more quickly. But we want to stay within the $60, make it taxpayer friendly,
Thank
stay
you.
within the targets that had originally been established.
Because I already have the sewer going up, and I'm just wondering how much more.
Right, and you're what you pay for a tank of gas. Looking at the cash flow, we see why the impact of the invoicing, by assuming the JPA's revenue account meant there was no need to collect from there, they create a revenue shortfall for the JPA. Makes sense, the shortfall need to be covered from future tax collections. They only have 2 sources of funds, right? The district tax collection and these federal subsidies. Federal subsidies aren't going to go up because they mis-invoiced you. Certainly don't want the bonds of the JPA to default or to have to revisit this issue again in the future, right? These bonds have, in the second they say bonds of the California Qualified School Construction Bond, Joint Powers Authority, parentheses, Antioch Unified School District, they're bonds with your names on them. And there are some, if the bonds default, they can come back on you. So we want to refill the coffers so that these bonds are paid from property taxes like they're supposed to be paid from. February, we asked the county to make a $1 million payment on the Series C bonds. The payment that was due, $1 million of the payment coming due in August, make that early so there wouldn't be a default on the JPA bonds. Now we have to go around and have the big solution that's going to solve the problem once and for all, allows us to set that tax rate. Last slide. So this is the solution we're bringing to you. New terms in terms of the payments. to the JPA. So your bonds are going to have different payments, going to be a little bit higher than they otherwise would, but they're going to be layered in. Required documentation we drafted by the District Bond Council and reviewed by county officials. We have Bob here nod up and down that we're doing this the right way. It's not a, taxpayer friendly, legal, all those kind of things. But it's important that we have the plan put in place by the end of this fiscal year for a variety of reasons. The audit. The auditor was the one who originally mentioned this problem. They say, hey, when we look at the debt service on the bonds and the payments that are coming through the county, there's a mismatch. We said, why could that be? And couldn't figure it out, but it had to do with the zero invoices for the payments due March 1, 2020 and September 1, 2020. So you don't notice it till the year later. We want the JPA to have sufficient funds on hand to make its March 1, 23 payment, right? They have big payments due in March, little payments due in September, when interest only, principal and interest in March. So we solved this March problem. We need to have the funds on hand to solve next March's problem. In the last slide, I put that in for Bob's entertainment. But I think it's serious. We intend to take up a discussion of BNY's status once the solution's in place, right? They're our partner for now, but they have not been super helpful. And I think we ought to be thinking about replacing them as paying agent in the future, but we want to be working with them until the solution's in place. So look for a resolution either next meeting or the one after that, hopefully next meeting. And it's one, again, taxpayer friendly, something that is well thought through, that hopefully increases trust in the district's bond program, right? Public has trusted you with the money. You've made some important improvements to these district schools. You want to show that as problems emerge, that we can develop smart solutions, do so transparently and in ways that are fair to past and future taxpayers.
Essentially, if I could synthesize that, essentially Bank of New York made an error, a problem that we are now going to solve in the least painful way to the taxpayer by having a new debt schedule that is least impactful to the taxpayer. Is that? Yeah, there you go.
I think that's, she could use a few more spreadsheets, but other than that has got the solution.
A one-sentence summary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which we'll bring back to the board. I think it's a resolution. Is that what
There'll
you
be a
want? Yeah,
resolution.
it'll be a resolution next board meeting.
Next meeting is what we hope. We need to have it signed by the JPA, so that's,
Any other
we hope
questions?
to have it in there.
Mr. Chair, I'm just happy we can take care of it.
Yeah, and we thought it was important to do this with transparency, and I think that's why we're here today.
Appreciate that. Okay.
I do have two quick questions. One, when it comes to the tax rate that the citizens are seeing, is that rebate that we saw in those 2 years, is that I guess I'm thinking, what factors are that affect the tax rates? And should that rebate that we saw there have been something that potentially we should have been looking out for and saying, oh, this is a little strange and outside of what we typically see? Or is it possible for that to kind of happen within the normal things and this was just something that kind of got lost in the weeds of that?
So the payments that have been missed have been just over $3 million, and they've been missed on 4 occasions, so it's less than $1 million per missed payment. And the district taxpayers on the bond programs, as I said, are paying $5 million per year in payments, and it pretty much was something that was, right, you didn't notice the impact on the tax rates. If you look back at them, you wouldn't have seen the differences. The county asked us to verify the amount to be collected in each year, and if you can imagine the calculation, they take the payments coming due, they deduct the amount of cash on hand, and they divide by the tax base. So what we see when they send us the spreadsheets is the payments coming due are right? The cash on hand is a little bit higher than it otherwise would have been, but not noticeably higher to me. And so the tax rate gets established. The money is spent on the rebate. Rebate is the amount, the lower tax to the taxpayer is relatively low. So I don't think that it was something that was obvious. It was not obvious to me when I reviewed it. It was not obvious to the county when they sent it out.
Got it. And then kind of a little bit follow up to that question. So then, is this something that we see more as an isolated incident, and or what kind of systemic steps or do we have to maybe prevent something like this from potentially happening again in the future?
I think having this is an obvious error of the paying agent, and so I think it should be addressed by, in my view, replacing the paying agent, and it wouldn't have happened had the person who is in charge of the Antioch account remained consistent over time
From the bank.
from the bank.
And also, this is the only bonds where we have a JPA. So that having that third party where the payments are made bypasses a little bit of the district. So I do think that you have to have a paying agent that you have trust in, and that is doing that as well. Because again, it goes from the bank to the treasurer.
Yep, that's an excellent point, because the JPA is representing this, or the paying agent is representing the JPA. The paying agent is the one who was confused. If we were missing a payment, even by $800,000 to a Vanguard or an actual investor in your bond, our phones would be ringing.
And so that sort of brings me to my question. So the bank made a mistake, if I'm following correctly,
Yeah.
and humor me.
Yeah,
so the
that's
bank
a big theme of the presentation.
The bank made a mistake,
Yeah.
and it's like, my bad, and there's no penalty, and I'm thinking personally,
Yeah.
if I overdraft my account, there's a penalty associated. So with these larger sort of relationships, there was a misstep for over a couple years.
So we asked this $1 million payment that we advanced. So it's the same pot of money, right? So it didn't cost us anything. But our first proposal was, we tell BNY, forward us that money, make the payment for us. We'll solve it on our regular schedule. They refused to do so.
And that's why part of what we said is that we will go back to the issue of the bank, but right now our goal is to deal with the immediate problem, and then there will be something coming forward to the board at a later date.
Okay, and just, full transparency, as people know that I like to do, as a taxpayer here, and, I'm assuming that other people might be interested here, listening to Trustee Rocha's comment earlier, we want to make sure that if there are sort of missteps, that we are supporting the public's best interest in sort of following up on those missteps.
Absolutely.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you very much for those good questions, though. Thank you. You got it.
Yeah.
They're more where they came from.
Okay, we go on to the next area, which is hearings. We have none.
None.
Public presentations, none. Consent items, we have A through Q. Anybody want to talk
I would
about
like
any
to.
of them?
I would like to pull number M.
Pull M? For further discussion. Okay.
Yeah. And then I just have quick comment on G and H. There are two donations on here. I want to highlight H, which is a donation from the Rodriguez family, who is donating some gym equipment and a friendship bench to Dozer Libby Medical High School. That family was also here a few board meetings ago, and so very thankful for the work that they're doing. And then item G is a donation from a project that some staff put together from that's funded through Donors Choose, which I'm, in an ideal world, they wouldn't need to do this, but thankful for all the people that donated to that and made these projects happen.
Mary, go back to M. Do you want to pull it for a separate vote or discussion?
No, I just want to
A
call
question.
attention to,
Okay.
and congratulations to Karen Clark, who's our new principal for for Dozier Libby. Just want to call that attention. I think we should always bring that up when we have a
Perfect.
change of
Yeah.
staff and congratulate. Thank you.
So I move we accept this consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Second. I have motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? It passes. 4-0. To number 11, action items. disclosure ratification of tentative agreement between AUSD and AEA. Jessica? Action item.
Thank you. Before the board this evening is the approval of the tentative agreement with our Antioch Education Association, the teachers in our district. The tentative agreement has gone to the county under AB 1200. We did receive approval this evening on all of the tentative agreements that are in front of you. I want to thank the bargaining groups for working so diligently to get this resolved. The parts of the tentative agreement are here in front of you, but primarily the salary schedule or the salary increase is 5%, retro to July 1, 2021, with an increase in health benefits that is about 90% of the increase that went up in January, with some changes to class size and hours of employment. So I would ask the board to approve the tentative agreement this evening.
Motion to ratify?
I move approval.
I'll second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Go to B. Same idea, different tentative agreement.
Yeah, this agreement is with our classified employees, CSEA, and this evening I received notification that they also approved by their bargaining group, with, I believe, only one voting no on the, with over 200 voting, which is really high for CSEA. Again, I want to thank, at this point, CSEA has bifurcated out and settled salary and benefits. We'll continue to bargain on other items in the contract, but we felt that it was important as our employees go off to the summer that they're able to see the increase in their salary and benefits, and it is pretty much the same as AEA. So I would ask the board to approve that as well.
I move to approve.
Ratified, okay.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, good to see. AMA.
This is our Antioch Management Association, and although they're not a bargaining group, they are a group that we meet with on a meet and confer status, and I did meet with AMA as a whole to anybody who chose to be there. The settlement with AMA is the same 5%, as well as the benefits equal to certificated employees in our district. There's a slight difference between certificated and classified. Some years ago, classified put a little bit more on the family and less on the two-party, but in the end, it's still about 90% of the increase. And I would ask the board to approve.
Do I have a motion to agree? To approve.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Do I have a second? I'll second it. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0. We're on to D, which is revised senior management salary schedule. Action item.
This is the last three remaining employees in this district that you haven't approved this evening, which would be the salary schedule for the superintendent, the associate superintendent, and myself. And this would be the salary schedule at the same 5% that has gone to all other employees. And I would ask the board to approve the salary schedule.
I move approval.
Second?
Yeah.
Second?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wait.
Okay.
Okay, you said that? Okay, fair enough. All in favor, say aye.
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 4-0 passes. We're into E, services agreement with Delta Bay Healthcare. 2021-22.
All right, this is a new vendor, and this is here. It's to provide services for a student in the extended year program this summer. So it'll provide physical therapy for one special education student. So I would ask the board to approve this vendor agreement.
Motion approved.
I move approval.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0 passes. F, services agreement with Dr. Jose Medina.
And that is mine as well. So again, this is a new vendor. Dr. Jose Medina is a highly regarded expert and professional developer in the land of dual immersion. And with our expanding dual immersion program, we are hoping to contract with him for next year to provide professional development to all of our dual immersion teachers. And so with that, I would ask the board to approve this new vendor agreement.
I'll move to approve this item F.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0 passes. And then G, school calendar for next year.
This is actually for 23-24. We try to move forward 2 years so our parents do know what's coming, and everyone can plan vacations accordingly. One of the things that I did not mention in CSEA is we also, as one of their holidays now, Juneteenth is a holiday that will be celebrated here in Antioch Unified, and that holiday will be added to the school calendar. We had to wait until the board approved the tentative agreement this evening. So that will be added before it is presented to the public.
So motion to approve.
I'll
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes 4-0. Go to number 12, items for information, discussion, action by the board. The first one is online public comments. That was Ellie's, and she's not here.
Yeah, I would ask that the board move this to the next meeting. I think
That's what I
she
was gonna say, yeah.
would like to be here to discuss it.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. So we go to board member group related to trauma and grief, and I'm sure you've all read that idea. It's an action item, I think, where we would like to establish the president and the vice president to meet with the district personnel. And, Stephanie, you want to explain more of that?
Yes, well, just following what the board had voted on several meetings ago, that they would like to establish a working group. So this, in discussing, I believe President Hack discussed, we have some terms ending, and so if this might be a group that we want to continue longer, he thought it important that himself and Trustee Hernandez serve on it to look at our policies, see if there are gaps that we need to revise from a board standpoint. And also, we're looking at moving towards a community school grant, which will engage stakeholders and will involve a lot of this work. And so we would like for those board members to be invited to participate to engage the public.
Any questions or discussion?
I'm excited. It seems like this is more in the direction of what I was thinking. So I'm very supportive of the idea.
And it is an action item if you'd like
So you'd
to.
like to make
I
a
can move
motion?
approval.
Okay, do a second.
I'll second.
Yep.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. We go down to resolutions for first reading. There are none. Resolutions in 14 for immediate action. Jessica, you have the first one.
I have quite a few of them, and so I'm going to talk a little bit in general. These are resolutions that must come before the board prior to, as we start to prepare for next year's hiring. There has to be resolutions on file that allow us, for this particular one, to allow our substitutes to have certificated substitutes to have a waiver on the CBEST. What that means is they have 1 year to get it. So it doesn't remove the requirement, but without a resolution on file, we cannot hire substitutes on a waiver. So I would ask the board to approve this resolution,
The first one. On
the
A.
first one.
Okay. So a motion to approve resolution 2021-2250.
I move approval.
Second? I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes. B, Jessica, that's you too.
B is a need for our CLAD certificates. The authorizations that come through now, our credentials that come through, have CLAD embedded in the program. That's not true for our teachers who come from out of state or for teachers who may have gotten their credentials quite some time ago. So this allows a teacher to start with us, and they have 1 year to complete their CLAD authorization and move forward. So I would ask the board to approve this as well.
Can we have sort of a, can you let us know what CLAD means for
Sure.
public consumption?
It's cross-cultural language and academic development, and it is required for all of our classes which have English language learners in it, and that is the majority of our classes here in Antioch. Thank you.
So a motion to approve.
I so move.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. To C, next resolution.
The next resolution is a declaration of need to request for short-term permits through the California Commission. Again, we have to anticipate how much we may need. We do that every year. There are teachers that work through while they're getting their credential. They work with us. Not everybody can afford to go straight to college and work and go full time. So this allows us to bring in which are some of our best teachers. On a short-term permit, they must complete the work or a certain amount of the work within the first year in order to continue with Antioch.
And Associate Superintendent Romero, they would also be under the guidance or the mentorship of sort of a senior teacher, correct?
Absolutely. We have a great intern program for that mentor our new teachers and those that are on less than a preliminary.
Okay. Have a motion?
I move approval.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 4-0. Resolutions for second reading action, there are none. Board policies for first reading, there is one on information only. Christine?
Yeah, this reflects Assembly Bill 131, which is new legislation, which part of the uniform complaint procedures are annually changing. This includes that there cannot be a informal process for meeting regarding allegations of sexual harassment is the main issue. That was in AB 131, so I would ask the board to approve. First reading.
First reading.
I would not ask the board to approve.
This is for information only?
Yes,
It will come
sorry.
back to us on the next board meeting.
Correct.
Okay. On down to board policies for second reading, there are none. Information items for general information, there are none. Future agenda items from board members, I assume we're going to bring back Ellie's thing next time. Okay. Anybody else have another item?
Yeah, just a few things, mostly for making sure that we're closing up loops and stuff. One, making sure that we get the student board member policy on here. Next, I'd love to see what the next steps then are for the mental health committee, getting a meeting on the agenda, or if we need to do other formalizing through as a board, just whatever makes that move through faster. And then I know in different capacities, we're going to have these discussions that involve our priorities, including things like opening libraries and pursuing additional funding. I just want to make sure we close up those threads, whether they're a priorities discussion or some other discussion of maybe our budget or however that works, as long as we close up those threads that I think we've been trying to make sure that we discuss and talk about.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Or future agenda items? Husband? Okay. Additional comments would exceed the first 30-minute session. Since we had none the first time around. We still have none. Okay, so you got to write that down.
It's a record.
You got to edify that somehow. Reported comments from the board members. We do have the party this weekend, right?
Correct,
Yes,
14th.
we have our staff appreciation. I think we have over nearly 800 people now coming
Wow.
at Contra Loma Park, and you're welcome to attend. It'll be the old-fashioned sack races,
Saturday.
egg talks.
You do realize that I heard in the news this morning it's supposed to be 90 degrees on Saturday?
Yes,
Yes.
wear a hat.
We'll be under a tree. We'll
Bring a
be under
fan.
a tree. Bring a chair, right?
Yes,
What
Bring a chair.
time is that?
12 to 3 o'clock, and you're welcome to bring your families as well.
And I think if you got to pay $5, right, to get in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For parking.
Yeah, for parking, yeah, just for notice. Cool, I have a pass, never mind. Okay,
So this is reports and comments?
yeah.
Okay. So I do like to highlight some of the things that we're doing in the community, and I've mentioned before that I'm involved with mentoring a number of students, and I was sharing with Trustee Hack earlier. Next weekend, I will be having a a group of young men that we've been mentoring since their sophomore year. They're graduating high school this year. They're going off to college. We will be having a small ceremony for them. This is in Oakland, and we will be giving scholarships to them. I won't say how much, just in case they're watching. But we'll give them scholarships and sort of a proper send-off. We supported 7 students, we supported 8 students, 7 of which are enrolled in college. 1 we're still working to get him enrolled, but we are very hopeful. Secondarily, tomorrow we have the King's Conference, which I know that Director Wisely is excited about. In collaboration with Rotary, I'll be there along with some of the other leaders in the community. We'll be speaking to young men about different parts of, how we developed into who we are. So I'm
was the
excited about
time
that
on
as well. Ooh, I think that, Director Wisely, what time is that?
It is going to start at 9 and
Yeah.
it will end, I believe, at 3 o'clock.
Yeah. I just didn't want to give, because I know the time I'm supposed to be there, but I knew it started earlier. Yeah.
I could be there for 6 hours, though.
No. I wish I could dedicate 6 hours, but, there's competing interests. So thank you. That's all I have.
All right. You got a book?
Yeah, I'll just highlight another book today, as I always do. Today, I want to highlight Hair Love, a really
that's
great
cute.
story that highlights all the different hairstyles that often aren't very portrayed well in media and in society in general, and all their glory with all the coils and kinks that are involved in great hairstyles like that. So I think it's a really good read and a good way to help students feel that they're being represented when so much of the media that's out there doesn't always represent all the different ways that people can appear in society. And then I don't have anything else to report on there.
Mary?
Okay, actually, Dr. Clyde and I attended the school in City and School, remember? And we had a wonderful presentation that we had on the recreation in the city, and in the school district. But the best thing that's coming up is our mental health. We are going to be able to bring our mental health so that the city can understand what we're doing in our schools. And that's at the next meeting, which is the, where am I? 5/26, I believe, is our next meeting. That was number one. Number two is that I did go to open house at Park, and that was on the 5th of May. And then on the 13th, which I invite all of you, or remind everybody that our teacher invited us at Mission School on their black top. They're going to have a parade, and that's this Friday. And I believe that was it that I
And what
wanted to
time is that,
make
Trustee
sure.
Rocha?
9 to 10, just 1 hour, so that makes it hard for some of you.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's about it.
And this is the time of the year where a lot of schools are doing events.
Oh, I know.
And music, particularly, especially at high school. I was at
There was one last night.
last night, and Larry Widener, who's been a music teacher forever, is retiring at the end of this year.
Right.
So they all did their thing with them, and it's cool to be out there and see the kids do what they do. Especially the music program, which has not existed really.
It's
for a couple of
improved.
years, and they're all there doing it, and it's how they get that all together.
Larry Widener taught me to play trombone. So.
Oh, jeez.
Very good.
Okay. Well, that's not his fault. All right, future meetings, May 26th, May 25th, and June 15th.
That's it for the summer.
That's in the summer, yeah. So,
Okay.
motion to adjourn.
I move approval.
I'll second.
Sorry.
That was quick. All in favor, say aye.
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 We are gone.